12 times rockets and spacecraft crashed and burned in 2025. The year 2025 was exceptionally busy for spaceflight, both for better and for worse. Several historic milestones were achieved in the final frontier, including the first fully successful private lunar landing and the official debut of Blue Origin's New Glenn heavy lift rocket. At the same time, spaceflight reminded everyone why it remains one of humanity's most challenging endeavors. A number of missions failed, some of them in dramatic fashion. Here is a brief rundown of 12 of the most memorable mishaps of 2025. 12 Indian rocket fails during satellite launch. India attempted to launch an Earth-observing radar satellite on May 17, 2025, but a problem with the launch vehicle resulted in failure. A PSLV-XL rocket lifted off from the Satish Dhawan Space Center carrying the EOS-09 radar satellite for the Indian Space Research Organization. About 6 minutes into the flight, the rocket suffered an issue in its third stage. As a result, EOS-09 never reached orbit and was declared lost. 11. Firefly Aerospace suffers a 1-2 punch. Firefly Aerospace's Alpha rocket launched from California on April 29, 2025, carrying a technology demonstration payload for Lockheed Martin. Although the rocket reached an altitude of roughly 200 miles, it failed to achieve orbital velocity due to a malfunction shortly after stage separation, and the payload was lost. While Firefly identified the issue and began preparations for a return to flight, the company faced another setback on September 29. During testing, the Flight 7 first-stage booster exploded on the test stand. The issue was traced to a process error during integration. Firefly now plans to launch Flight 7 with a different first stage in early 2026. 10. Landspace's Zhuke-2 rocket fails. The Zhuke-2 rocket, operated by Chinese startup Landspace, failed on its sixth launch attempt on August 14, 2025, shortly after lifting off from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. The company did not disclose the payloads aboard the mission. This marked the second failure for Zhuke-2, a methane-fueled rocket that uses liquid methane and liquid oxygen, similar to SpaceX's Raptor-powered Starship. 9. Galactic Energy's Series 1 also fails. Another Chinese rocket failure followed just a few months later. On November 9, Galactic Energy launched its Series 1 solid-fueled rocket from Jiuquan, carrying 2 commercial Earth observation satellites and a university payload. While the first 3 stages performed nominally, an anomaly in the 4th stage caused the mission to fail. There were also unconfirmed reports of a possible Kuaizhou 1A explosion at Jiuquan on March 1, although details remain unclear. 8. Japan's H-3 rocket fails during navigation satellite launch. With only 10 days left in the year, Japan experienced a major setback. On December 21, the H-3 rocket encountered a problem in its second stage during the launch of the Michibiki 5 navigation satellite. The spacecraft failed to reach its intended orbit and was declared lost by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. 7. First orbital launch from European soil ends in failure. On March 30, German startup ESAR Aerospace attempted the first orbital launch from European soil using its Spectrum rocket from Andøya spaceport in Norway. Just 18 seconds after liftoff, the rocket suffered an anomaly, crashed back to Earth, and exploded in a striking fireball against the snowy landscape. Despite the failure, ESAR Aerospace is preparing for its second launch attempt from the same site. 6. Australia's first homegrown orbital rocket falls short. On July 29, Australian company Gilmore Space attempted the nation's first orbital launch with its Eris rocket from the Bowen Orbital Spaceport in Queensland. Shortly after liftoff, the rocket slid sideways off the pad and fell back to Earth just 14 seconds into flight. 5. South Korea's first private orbital rocket fails. South Korean startup Innospace made history on December 22 by launching the country's first privately developed orbital rocket, the Hanbit Nano. However, about 1 minute into flight, the vehicle suffered an anomaly and crashed back to Earth. As a result, 2025 proved to be a difficult year for first-time rocket debuts, which is not unusual given the complexity of new launch systems. 4. Boosters that did not stick. The landing 4 orbital missions in 2025 featured failed booster landing attempts. These included Blue Origin's New Glenn on January 15, SpaceX's Falcon 9 on March 3, Landspace's Zhuke 3 on December 3, and China's Long March 12A on December 22. Although all 4 rockets successfully reached orbit, their booster recovery attempts were unsuccessful. In fairness, landing was a secondary objective for each mission, and 3 of the 4 involved first flight attempts. The Falcon 9 loss was SpaceX's only landing failure out of more than 160 attempts in 2025. Still, each incident was technically a failure and remains noteworthy. 3. Private American lunar lander tips over. On March 6, Intuitive Machines' Athena lander successfully touched down near the lunar South Pole carrying NASA payloads. Unfortunately, shortly after landing, the spacecraft tipped over. Its orientation prevented some instruments from deploying and limited solar power generation. Athena was declared inoperable the following day. This marked the second such incident for Intuitive Machines, following a similar outcome with its Odysseus lander in 2024. The company plans to return to the moon with another mission in 2026. 2. Private Japanese lander crashes on the moon. On June 5, Japanese company iSpace attempted to land its resilient spacecraft in the Mare Frigoris region of the moon. The lander crashed during descent, marking the company's second failed lunar landing attempt after a similar incident in 2023. Despite these setbacks, iSpace successfully reached lunar orbit on both missions and achieved several important milestones. The company plans another attempt in 2027. 1. Starship's explosive test flight year. SpaceX's Starship, the most powerful rocket ever built, flew 5 times in 2025 during suborbital test missions from South Texas. The first 3 flights did not go as planned. On January 16, the Super Heavy booster successfully returned and was caught by the launch tower arms. However, the ship upper stage exploded less than 10 minutes into flight, scattering debris over the Turks and Caicos Islands. A similar failure occurred on March 6. Flight 9 on May 27 represented a setback, as both stages were lost prematurely, although the ship flew longer than on previous attempts. On June 18, another ship exploded during ground testing ahead of Flight 10. Nevertheless, the program rebounded later in the year. Flights 10 and 11, launched on August 26 and October 13, were both successful. SpaceX is now preparing for the first flight of Starship version 3, a larger and more powerful variant designed with Mars missions in mind, continuing its rapid pace of development despite occasional setbacks.